At my father's birthday dinner, my brother blocked the private room door and said, "Get out. That seat is for family, not the garbage Dad regrets raising." I looked past him and saw Mom laughing as she handed my name card to my sister's boyfriend, like I had never paid for the whole dinner. I nodded, walked back to the parking lot, and sent the voice note I'd kept for months. 5 minutes later, 3 uncles stood up without touching their food, and Dad suddenly stopped smiling. The private room at the Hamilton had a frosted glass door with a brass handle and a printed card on the hostess stand that read Malone, 7 p.m., 24 guests. I could see through the frosted glass well enough to make out the shape of the long table, the candles, the centerpiece, and the blurred outline of my mother moving between chairs with place cards in her hand. I had paid for this room 3 weeks ago. $3,200 deposit on my Malone Recovery business card. The remaining $5,200 charged at 5 p.m. today, 2 hours before the first guest arrived. $8,400 total for a private birthday dinner for my father, who was turning 63 and who I had not heard say my name with warmth since I was 22. My brother was standing in front of the door. Lander Malone, 34, 3 years younger than me. He wore a fitted blazer and a watch he could not afford, and the posture of a man who has been told he is in charge of a door and has decided to turn that into a display of authority. His hand was on the brass handle, not opening it, holding it. The way a man holds something when his job is to make sure it does not open for the person standing in front of him. Cole was behind me, my 12-year-old son. He was wearing a button-down shirt he had picked out himself at Target, and he had tucked it in without being asked because he wanted to look right for Grandpa's birthday. He was holding a card he had made. Not bought. Made. Construction paper. Colored pencil. The front said "Happy Birthday, Grandpa" in block letters, with a drawing of a tow truck, because Cole knows that Grandpa's business has trucks, and Cole's dad has trucks, and Cole thinks trucks are the thing that holds the family together. Lander looked at me. Then he looked at Cole. Then he looked at me again. "Get out. That seat is for family, not the garbage Dad regrets raising. You drag wrecks off the highway for a living. You smell like diesel and toe grease. Cole is turning into a roadside version of you." Lander leaned forward. "Mom does not want your energy ruining Dad's birthday, and I agree. Go sit in your truck. That is where you belong." He delivered that with a 12-year-old holding a handmade birthday card 2 feet behind me. In a restaurant hallway, where a hostess at the stand looked down at her screen and a couple walking to the restroom slowed and then kept moving. "Garbage Dad regrets raising. Roadside version of you. Go sit in your truck." I looked past Lander through the frosted glass. Inside the private room, Mom was at the far end of the table. Midge Malone, 61. She was laughing. Not at a joke someone told. The laugh she produces when she is arranging something and is pleased with the arrangement. She was holding a name card between 2 fingers. My name card. Dade, and she was placing it at the seat next to my sister Kay's boyfriend Rio. She was giving my seat to a man who had been dating my sister for 4 months and had never once asked what I did for a living. My chair. My name card. My $8,400 dinner. I looked at Lander. His hand was still on the door handle. His jaw was set. His blazer was buttoned. Behind him, through the glass, I could see Uncle Shaw at the near end of the table checking his phone. Uncle Ferris was pouring water. Uncle Britton was pulling out a chair. The tow strap was in my truck. The yellow one Tull Archer gave me on my first solo recovery at age 20, rated for 30,000 pounds. Coiled behind the seat where it has lived for 17 years. Tull wrote on the tag with a Sharpie, "Everything can be pulled out. But not everything should be." I almost put my hands on Lander's chest and moved him. Almost pushed the blazer and the watch and the attitude out of the doorframe and walked into the room I had paid for and sat in the chair with my name on it and ate the dinner my card was paying for. But Cole was behind me. His card was in his hand. And the hallway was not the right place to pull the thing I had been carrying for 6 months. The parking lot was. "Understood," I told Lander. I turned. I put my hand on Cole's shoulder. We walked back through the restaurant, past the hostess, past the couple who had slowed, past the bar, and out the front door into the parking lot where my flatbed truck was parked under a light pole with the Malone Recovery decal on the door and the tow strap coiled behind the seat. Cole climbed into the passenger side. He still had the card. He set it on the dashboard. "Happy birthday, Grandpa," the tow truck drawing faced up. The colored pencil was smudged where his thumb had been holding it. "Dad, why can we not go in? Uncle Lander does not want us inside. But you paid for the dinner. You told me. You said it was a big dinner for Grandpa, and you were handling the room." "Yes, and Uncle Lander will not let us in?" "No. Did Grandpa say we could not come?" That question sat in the cab of the truck like a brick I did not want to lift. Because the answer was yes. Dad had not appeared at the door. Dad had not overridden Lander. Dad was sitting at the head of a table in a private room I financed, and he had not walked 20 feet to the hallway to tell his grandson he was welcome. The garbage he regrets raising. That was not Lander's phrase. That was Dad's phrase in Lander's mouth. "I think Grandpa is busy tonight," I told Cole. Cole looked at the card on the dashboard. He looked at the restaurant door. He pressed his lips together the way a 12-year-old presses his lips together when he knows the answer is more complicated than the question, and he is choosing to accept the simpler version because the complicated one would require him to rethink his grandfather. "Can I leave the card on the truck? In case we go back?" I almost broke right there. Almost let the 6 months of carrying a recording, and the 4 seconds of standing at a blocked door, and the 12-year-old's question about a birthday card he made with colored pencils crack the wall I had built to get through this night. But the tow strap was behind the seat, and Toll's Sharpie was on the tag. Everything can be pulled out, but not everything should be. "Leave it on the dash," I told him. "We will figure it out." I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off. The parking lot was quiet. The light pole hummed above the truck. Inside the Hamilton, 24 people were sitting down to a meal I had financed because 3 weeks ago Mom called me and said, "Dade, can you handle the room? You are the only one with a business card big enough. Handle the room." The same phrase she uses when she needs me to pay for something without being visible while paying for it. Not handle the toast. Not handle the guest list. Not pick the menu, handle the room. Because that is what I am in this family. The room handler. The card swiper. The man who pays for the building and is told to sit in the parking lot. If you are watching this and you have ever paid for a dinner you were not allowed to eat, you are in the right place. Welcome to Family Secret Tales. I had the voice note on my phone. 3 minutes and 22 seconds. Recorded 6 months ago, October 14th at 10:47 p.m. in the hallway of my father's house on Whittle Springs Road. The file sat in a folder I labeled Receipts because nobody scrolls through a tow truck operator's receipt folder, and nobody in my family has ever asked to see my phone because nobody in my family has ever been curious enough about my life to look at it. I had driven over that October night to pick up Cole's baseball bag. He had left it after a weekend stay at Grandpa's. The front door was unlocked, which was normal because Dad has never locked the front door in 30 years of living on Whittle Springs. The TV was on in the living room playing a Vols game at low volume. I walked in, turned toward the front closet where Cole keeps his bag, and heard my father's voice coming from the kitchen around the corner. Not speaking to me. Not speaking on the phone. Speaking to Lander. They were at the kitchen table. I could hear the refrigerator humming and the scrape of a chair leg and Lander coughing once. The hallway was dark. I stopped walking. I stood 6 feet from the kitchen doorway with my phone in my hand, and my finger found the record button the way my finger finds a winch switch in the dark on I-40 at 3 a.m. Muscle memory. The instinct of a man who knows that what he is hearing needs to be preserved. The uncle's money is gone. Dad's voice was low and steady and matter-of-fact, the voice he uses when he is explaining something he has already accepted and needs someone else to accept. All of it. Shaw's 50 covered the warehouse lease last year when I could not make the payment. Ferris's 40 went straight to the IRS penalty from the 2022 audit. Britain's 65 paid off the equipment note I took out for the delivery trucks that are now leased to someone else. Lander's voice, lower, careful, and the quarterly statements? Fiction. I print them on the company letterhead and mail them myself. 8% annual return. Clean columns. Professional formatting. As long as they think the business is growing, nobody asks questions. And if they do ask, they will not. Shaw trusts family over paperwork. Ferris does not read numbers. And Britain only cares about the quarterly check. What about the checks you send them? I pay the dividends with money from the newer investments. Ferris's 40 funded Shaw's last 2 dividend checks. Britain's 65 funded Ferris's. It rotates. As long as fresh money comes in, the cycle holds. I stood in the hallway with my phone in my hand. The screen was bright. The recording app was open. I had pressed record the moment I heard the uncle's money is gone. 3 minutes and 22 seconds of my father's voice explaining to my brother how he stole $155,000 from his own brothers and built a paper fortress of fake returns to keep them from looking. I picked up Cole's baseball bag from the closet. I walked out the front door. Nobody heard me come in. Nobody heard me leave. I carried that recording for 6 months, 182 days. On my phone, in a folder I labeled receipts because nobody scrolls through a tow truck operator's receipt folder. I carried it through Thanksgiving dinner, where I sat at Dad's table and watched him carve a turkey and pour wine for Shaw and Ferris and Britain and tell them the business had its best quarter yet. I carried it through Christmas when Dad gave Shaw a bottle of bourbon with a card that said to the best partner a brother could ask for. I carried it through February when Britain called me to ask if the quarterly statement numbers looked right to me because the returns seemed almost too good. I told him to ask Dad. I almost told him the truth right there. Almost said the word fiction and let Britain do the math. But I was hauling a rolled semi off I-40 in the rain and the tow strap was tight on the frame and the moment passed and I put the phone back in my pocket. I kept the recording because I was hoping it would not be needed. I hoped Dad would fix it, would call his brothers and say the words out loud and turn the kitchen confession into a family conversation and find a way to return what he took. I hoped he would sell the warehouse and the remaining inventory and the delivery trucks he was leasing to another company and write 3 checks and sit across from Shaw and Ferris and Britain and say I was wrong. Here is your money. I am sorry. He did not. He sent another round of fake quarterly statements in January, another in April, another in July. 3 more envelopes of fiction on company letterhead while his brothers opened them at their kitchen tables and believed their money was growing, and Lander deposited another $2,200, and Dad smiled at family dinners, and nobody asked questions because nobody knew there were questions to ask. I almost deleted the recording twice. The first time was December, 3 days after Christmas. Dad called to ask if I could tow a car for one of Lander's friends. He sounded normal on the phone. He sounded like a father who has a son he calls when he needs something practical done. I opened the recording on my phone that night, and my thumb hovered over delete for 11 seconds. Then I opened the most recent quarterly statement Dad had mailed to Shaw, and I looked at the column that said net return, 8.2%. And I knew the number was invented the way I know when a VIN plate has been tampered with. I put the phone back. The second time was February. Cole asked me why we never went to Grandpa's house anymore. I told him we had been busy. He accepted that the way 12-year-olds accept things their parents say, with trust and without the vocabulary to challenge the lie underneath. I held the phone that night and looked at the recording and almost erased it because my son deserved a simpler answer than the truth. But simple answers are what got Shaw's $50,000 and Ferris's $40,000 and Britain's $65,000 turned into warehouse rent and IRS penalties and equipment leases. Simple answers are what kept the uncles writing checks. Simple is how you get robbed by family. Now I was sitting in a parking lot in a truck that smelled like diesel and toe grease. The same smells Lander had used as evidence that I did not belong inside a room I financed. If you have ever carried something for months because you were hoping it would not be needed and then watch the person who made it necessary call you worthless, Subscribe to Family Secret Tales and hit the bell. I opened the family group chat. 28 members. Malone's, spouses, cousins, the 3 uncles were all in the chat. They were also all inside the private room right now, 15 feet from Dad, eating a dinner my card was paying for. I pressed the microphone icon. I attached the voice note. 322. The file name was October 14. I typed one line beneath it, Dad's voice. His kitchen. October 14th. Listen before dessert. I pressed send. Then I opened the 3 uncles' individual text threads. To each one I sent the same thing. A screenshot of the Malone Auto Supply business bank account showing the current balance of $11,400, the outstanding debt of $120,000, and the zero value column where their investment returns should have been. I had access to this account because Malone Recovery had done the company's towing for 3 years, and I had been given login credentials to submit invoices. The credentials had never been revoked. Then I sent one more message to the group chat. The text that would be the last thing I said to this family in a group setting, that dinner cost me $8,400. The voice note cost you $155,000. Enjoy the meal I paid for. I put the phone on the dashboard next to Cole's birthday card. Happy birthday, Grandpa. The tow truck drawing. The colored pencil letters. I looked at it, and I looked at the phone, and I sat there in the parking lot with the engine off and the tow strapped behind the seat and waited. Cole was watching me. He did not ask what I had sent. He did not ask what the voice note was. He sat in the passenger seat with his hands in his lap and the trust of a 12-year-old who knows his father well enough to know that whatever just happened was necessary. What happened inside the Hamiltons' private room in the next 5 minutes was told to me later by Uncle Shaw, who called me at 11 p.m. that night from his truck parked at a pilot station on Kingston Pike. His voice was raw and his breathing was uneven, and he talked for 22 minutes without stopping. I need you to know what happened after you left, Shaw started, because you deserve to hear it from someone who was in that room. I am listening. The phones buzzed in sequence. I always check my phone at meals. You know that. 2 kids who text at odd hours. I opened the chat and saw the voice note. Saw the file name. October 14. Saw your text, Dad's voice. His kitchen. October 14th. Listen before dessert. Shaw pressed play. He held the phone to his ear. 30 seconds. Then he recognized the voice. I put it on speaker, Dade. I do not know why. Maybe because the room deserved to hear it. Maybe because I needed witnesses. Maybe because after 20 years of mailing checks to my brother, I wanted the room to understand what I was hearing. Dad's voice came through Shaw's phone speaker and filled the private room. Over the candles and the bread plates and the centerpiece and the untouched salads and the $8,400 dinner, the uncle's money is gone. All of it. Shaw's 50 covered the warehouse lease last year. When I could not make the payment, the room went still, Shaw told me. Not quiet. Still, like everybody stopped being alive for 3 seconds. Midge had a name card in her hand. She did not put it down. She just held it. Kay's boyfriend was chewing, and he stopped chewing and held the food in his cheek. Lander was at the door. His face went gray. The recording continued. The ears penalty, Britain's equipment note, the fictional quarterly statements, the dividend rotation. When your dad's voice said the quarterly statements I send them are fiction, Ferris dropped his fork. It hit the plate, and the plate rang, and that was the loudest thing in the room after the recording. Ferris was the first to stand. He pushed his chair back without touching the table. His napkin slid off his lap onto the floor. He looked at Kemp across the table the way a man looks at someone he has known for 55 years and is seeing for the first time. Britton was second. He stood slowly. He put both hands flat on the table and pushed himself up. His jaw was tight, and his breathing was measured. The breathing of a man who is deciding whether to speak or walk, and is choosing walk because speaking might lead to something a 60-year-old should not do at a restaurant. Shaw was third. He stood and picked up his phone and stopped the recording and looked at Kemp. Is that your voice, Kemp? Shaw's tone was flat, not angry yet. The anger would come later, in the truck, on the phone. Right now it was verification. A man confirming the thing he just heard, so there is no room for anyone to say later that it was taken out of context or misunderstood. Dad's face had changed the moment the recording started playing from Shaw's phone. The birthday smile dissolved. His hands went flat on the table, his jaw locked. His eyes moved from Shaw to Ferris to Britton, and back to Shaw, the triangle of brothers he had robbed for 8 years. All standing now, all looking at him, all hearing their own investment amounts read back to them in his voice. Mom was frozen at the end of the table, with a name card still in her hand. Kay had her phone in her lap and her eyes on the tablecloth. Rio was standing near the wall holding a glass of wine he had not sipped. Lander was near the door, the same door he had blocked to keep me out, and his face was the color of drywall, because the recording also captured his voice asking, "And if they do ask?" Which made him not just a bystander but a participant. "I can explain," Dad managed. "Is that your voice?" Shaw repeated. 4 seconds. The longest seconds in 26 years of Malone Auto Supply. Dad's chin dropped an inch. Yes, Shaw picked up his coat from the back of his chair. He put it on. Ferris picked up his keys from the table. Britton folded his napkin and set it on his untouched plate with the same care he had used when writing the $65,000 check 4 years ago. The three brothers walked out of the private room in sequence, each one passing the frosted glass door without looking back. They walked past the frosted glass door, past the hostess stand, into the parking lot where my truck was still parked under the light pole. Shaw saw me through the windshield. He stopped for 2 seconds. He looked at me the way a man looks at the person who just handed him a piece of information that will rearrange the next decade of his life. He nodded once. "Not thanks." Acknowledgement. Then he walked to his truck. They drove away in 3 separate vehicles. The parking lot got quieter with each engine. I called Toll from the truck. It was 7:40 p.m. He answered from his recliner with a ball game on. "It is done," I told him. "I sent it." Toll was quiet for 3 seconds. I could hear the crowd noise from the game in the background. "How are you?" "I do not know yet." "How is Cole?" I looked at my son in the passenger seat. The birthday card on the dashboard. His hand still in his lap. "He is here." "Then you are fine. Call me tomorrow." That was enough. That was always enough with Toll. He did not need the details. He did not need to hear the recording. He had known about it since November, when I drove to his house at midnight and sat on his porch and played it for him, and he listened to the whole thing without speaking, and then poured me a cup of coffee from his thermos and said, "That is a load-bearing wall, Dade. When you pull it, the whole building shifts. Make sure you are standing outside when it does." The next 3 days revealed the full scope of Lander's involvement. Pruitt, the accountant Ferris hired, found the management fee within 48 hours of opening the books. $2,200 per month, deposited on the first of every month directly to Lander Malone's personal checking account at Valley Federal Credit Union. 36 consecutive months. Not one missed. $79,200 total. The payments were categorized in Kemp's books as operational management consulting. Pruitt looked for a consulting agreement. There was none. She looked for a scope of work. There was none. She looked for invoices, timesheets, deliverables, meeting notes, project summaries, anything that would justify $79,200 in payments to a man whose primary contribution to the business was answering the phone when his father called. There was nothing. Just $2,200 a month from a pool of money that belonged to 3 uncles who believed it was being invested. The brother who blocked the private room door and called me garbage Dad regrets raising, who told my 12-year-old son he was a roadside version of his father, who told me to go sit in my truck because that was where I belonged, had been collecting $79,200 in stolen uncle money for 3 years. His blazer was purchased with Shaw's investment. His watch was purchased with Ferris's. His leased truck was making payments with Britton's. Everything he wore to block that door was funded by the same men who stood up from the table when they heard the truth. If you have ever found out that the person who told you that you did not belong was living on money stolen from the people who do, subscribe to Family Secret Tales and hit the bell. The financial fallout started Monday morning. Shaw called Kemp at 8 a.m. I know because Shaw called me at 8:14 to tell me what he had said. I told him I want my $50,000 returned, in full, in writing, within 7 days. He told me the money was invested in long-term growth positions. Shaw's voice was tight. I told him 6 words. The recording says otherwise. 7 days. What did he say? Nothing, he breathed. Then he said he would talk to his accountant. He does not have an accountant, Dade. He has a P.O. box and a printer. Ferris hired an accountant the same day. A woman named Pruitt from a firm on Gay Street who specialized in small business audits and forensic accounting for family disputes. Pruitt pulled 7 years of Malone Auto Supply's financial records. She requested bank statements, tax filings, deposit records, vendor payments, and all shareholder communications. What she found took her 3 days and 18 pages. $155,000 in deposits from the 3 uncles over 8 years. 0 investment allocations. 0 growth accounts. 0 mutual fund purchases. 0 certificate of deposit openings. The money had entered the business account and been spent on operating costs within 90 days of each deposit. $50,000 from Shaw went to a warehouse lease payment and 2 months of back utilities. $40,000 from Ferris went directly to an heirs penalty from a 2022 audit that Kemp had never disclosed to any family member. $65,000 from Britton paid off an equipment loan on delivery trucks that Kemp then leased to a competitor's operation and pocketed the lease revenue personally. The quarterly statements Kemp mailed to his brothers were created in Microsoft Word on his home computer. Pruitt matched the formatting to a template available on a free legal forms website. The numbers were invented. The return percentages were fabricated. The net growth column was a formula Kemp designed to show exactly 8% regardless of what the actual account contained. The statements were printed on Malone Auto Supply letterhead and mailed from Kemp's personal P.O. box, not from the business address. Britton did not hire an accountant. Britton hired a lawyer. He filed a civil complaint in Knox County Circuit Court. $65,000 in misappropriated investment funds plus compensatory damages plus attorney's fees. The complaint referenced the voice recording as Exhibit A and the fabricated quarterly statements as Exhibit B. The filing was public record. Malone Auto Supply's business account held $11,400 on the day of the birthday dinner. It could not cover Shaw's $50,000. It could not cover Ferris's $40,000. It could not cover Britton's $65,000. It could not service the $120,000 in outstanding business debt. The warehouse lease was 2 months behind. The ears lien from the original penalty was still active and accruing interest. The equipment that Britton's $65,000 had paid off was generating $3,400 per month in lease revenue that went to Kemp's personal account, not to the business. Pruitt flagged this as a separate instance of self-dealing. Malone Auto Supply closed 6 weeks after the birthday dinner. Kemp locked the front door on a Tuesday afternoon without putting a sign up. He turned the key and drove home and did not come back. Lander's $2,200 monthly management fee stopped the day the recording surfaced. His truck payment, which he had been covering with the fee, bounced 30 days later. His truck was voluntarily surrendered to the dealer because Lander could not refinance without income documentation, and his only income documentation for 3 years was a management fee from a company that was now under audit for fraud. The dealer lot where his truck sat was 4 blocks from my tow yard. I drove past it every morning. The social fallout was quieter but wider, and it moved through the family the way cracks move through a wall, slowly at first, then everywhere. The 3 uncles stopped speaking to Kemp, not gradually. Fully, Shaw changed the contact name in his phone from Kemp to Do Not Answer. Ferris blocked his number. Britton's lawyer sent a formal letter advising no direct contact during litigation. Shaw's wife June called Midge on a Thursday evening. The call lasted 45 seconds. Your husband stole from his own brothers, Midge. He stole from mine. Shaw cried in his truck for an hour after that dinner. I have been married to that man for 31 years, and I have never seen him cry in a vehicle. Do not call this house again. The annual Malone fishing trip, 20 years running, a weekend on Norris Lake with all four brothers and their sons and a cooler full of beer and a dock rented from a man named Guthrie, did not happen in October. Nobody planned it. Nobody mentioned it. The date passed like a missed exit on the interstate. By November, Guthrie had rented the dock to another group. Thanksgiving was canceled, not postponed. Canceled, Shaw's family went to June's sister's house. Ferris ate at a restaurant. Britton stayed home. The table at Kemp and Midge's house that had held 26 Malone Thanksgivings sat empty on the fourth Thursday in November for the first time since 1998. Lander's $2,200 management fee stopped the day the recording surfaced. His truck payment bounced 30 days later. He surrendered the truck voluntarily because he could not refinance without legitimate income documentation. The dealer lot where the truck sat was 4 blocks from my yard on Rutledge Pike. I drove past it every morning. Mom called me once. 3 weeks after the dinner, her voice was thin and stripped of every management layer she usually wraps around her words. Your father has not left the house in 6 days, Dade. He does not eat properly. He does not answer the phone when his brothers call. Shaw left a voicemail that made your father cry. I have not seen your father cry since his mother's funeral. Ferris sent an auditor to the store. Britton filed a lawsuit. The store is closing. Why did you do this to your family? I did not do it, Mom. Dad did it. 8 years of fake statements and stolen investments. I recorded it. There is a difference between the person who commits the fraud and the person who exposes it. You recorded your own father in his own home. You stood in his hallway and recorded a private conversation. He was confessing to stealing $155,000 from his own brothers. That is not a private conversation. That is evidence. He is your father, Dade. He called me the garbage he regrets raising. Lander said the words at the door, but Dad wrote the script. You know that. You were inside the room laughing and handing my name card to a man I have met twice. You gave my seat to Rio at a dinner I paid $8,400 for. You took my name off the table and gave it to a stranger. Silence. 6 seconds. I could hear the kitchen clock through the phone. The same clock that has been in every kitchen in every house she has lived in. Your uncles will never forgive him, Mom whispered. That is not my problem to solve. My problem was the recording on my phone and the door my brother blocked and the seat my mother gave away. I solved all 3 of them in 5 minutes from a parking lot. She hung up. The line cut with a click that sounded final. 2 weeks later, Kemp called from a block number. I was on I-40 outside Cookville at 2 p.m., hooking a Honda Accord that had spun out in the rain. The tow strap was on the frame. The winch was pulling. The amber lights were flashing. Dade. His voice was quiet. Not the kitchen voice from the recording. Not the birthday voice from the table. A smaller voice. The voice of a man who has spent 2 weeks sitting in a closed store and has run out of walls to sit against. How did you get this number? Lander gave it to me. Of course he did. Listen, I want to restructure the business. Bring you in. Give you equity. 30%. Real equity, not paper. I will sign it over. If you retract the voice note from the group chat and talk to your uncles. Tell them I am going to make it right. Tell them I have a plan. You have had a plan for 8 years, Dad. The plan was to print fake statements and steal from your brothers. That was not a plan. That was survival. Survival is what I do on I-40 in the rain at 2 in the afternoon pulling cars out of ditches. What you did was fraud. 30%, Dade. The business can come back. With your trucks and my inventory network, we could build something. Your inventory network is a warehouse you cannot pay for. An ears lien you covered with uncle money and equipment you leased to someone else with Britain's $65. 0000. That is not a network. That is a crime scene. Silence. Rain on the cab roof. The winch clicking. I looked at the toe strap hanging from the rearview mirror, the yellow one Toll gave me at 20 years old. The Sharpie on the tag was faded, but legible. The strap says everything can be pulled out, Dad, but not everything should be. I hung up. The Accord settled on the bed. I strapped it down. I drove to the yard in the rain and did not think about the call again because there was nothing left in it to think about. Kemp sat in the closed auto parts store on a Wednesday evening, 6 weeks after the birthday dinner. The fluorescent lights were off. The parking lot light came through the front window and cast a yellow rectangle across the floor. The counter was bare except for a dust outline where the register had sat before the leasing company reclaimed it. The shelves behind him were half empty. Boxes of brake pads and oil filters and serpentine belts still sat where they had been stocked in September by an employee named Carl, who had worked there for 11 years and left without 2 weeks' notice after Pruitt's audit landed in the local business paper. The framed photo from 1998 was still on the wall behind the counter. 4 Malone brothers, arms around each other, standing in front of the original Malone Auto Supply on the day it opened. Shaw on the left with a mustache he shaved in 2004. Ferris next with the same haircut he has had since high school. Britton next, thinner than, polo tucked into jeans. Kemp on the right, younger, smiling, confident, the kind of smile a man wears when he believes the thing he is building will hold his family together. Kemp looked at the photo. He did not take it down. He sat on the stool with the lights off and the door locked from the inside and his hands on his knees. The parking lot light buzzed through the glass. A car passed on the street and did not stop. The store was silent the way only a place that used to be loud with ringing phones and clicking keyboards and customers asking about brake rotors can be silent when all of that stops. He sat there for 40 minutes. He did not call Shaw. He did not call Ferris. He did not call Britton. He looked at 4 brothers on a wall, and he knew that 3 of them would never stand next to him like that again. Saturday morning. November. The Malone Recovery Yard on Rutledge Pike. 2 flatbed trucks in the lot, one in the shop for a hydraulic line. The morning sun hits the chain rack on the wall and throws long shadows across the gravel. Cole is in the passenger seat of my lead truck reading a book about civil engineering that Toll bought him from the used bookstore on Market Square. The pages are dog-eared. The spine is cracked. Cole has read it twice and started a third time because he wants to understand how bridges hold weight, and I want him to understand that too. The toe strap is coiled on the console between us. Yellow, 30,000-pound rating. Toll Sharpie on the tag, faded but legible. Everything can be pulled out. But not everything should be. The $8,400 dinner charge was disputed with Amex. I filed the dispute the Monday after the dinner on the grounds that the event I paid for was modified without my authorization. My guest seat was reassigned and I was physically prevented from attending. Amex reversed $5,200. The $3,200 deposit was forfeited per the venue's 48-hour policy. Total cost to Dade Malone for pulling the strap, $3,200. Total cost to Kemp Malone for the birthday nobody finished, 3 brothers, a business, a son's management fee, and a photograph on a wall nobody is coming back to look at. Tull Archer is standing at the shop door with a thermos of coffee and a clipboard of weekend dispatch calls. 61 years old. He has been my partner since the second truck. He taught me that towing is not about pulling. It is about reading the wreck, knowing what is worth recovering and what should be left where it landed, and what needs to be hauled to the yard and cut for parts. Not everything on the road is worth saving, but the things that are worth saving are worth every mile of diesel it takes to get there. He looks at Cole's book. He looks at the birthday card in the glove box. He looks at the toe strap on the console. Dispatch has 4 calls this weekend, Toll tells me. 2 lockouts, a flatbed from West Knoxville, and a rollover on Pellissippi. What time is the rollover? 6 a.m. tomorrow. State Patrol called it in. Single vehicle. No injuries. They need a flatbed with a 30,000-pound rating. I look at the tow strap. We have one of those. We do. Cole looks up from his book. Can I come? Toll looks at me. I nod. Always, Toll tells him. The same word he told me when I was 20 and asked if I could ride along on my first interstate recovery. Always. Because showing up is not a one-time decision. It is the thing you do every morning until the people around you stop asking if you are coming and start counting on the fact that you already are. Cole closes the book. He looks at the tow strap on the console. He looks at the card still in the glove box. He put it there the night of the dinner, and he has not moved it. Happy birthday, Grandpa. The tow truck drawing. The colored pencil letters. He never delivered it. He never will. But he made it, and the making still counts, even when the person it was made for does not deserve it. Dad, are we still Malones? I look at him. At Tool in the shop doorway with his thermos and his clipboard. At the tow strap on the console, yellow and frayed at one edge, rated for 30,000 pounds. Built for the kind of work that gets diesel on your hands and grease on your shirt and keeps the road clear for the people who do not stop to say thank you. At the yard full of trucks that pull things out of ditches and off shoulders and out of the rain and the dark. We are the Malones who show up, Cole. That is enough. Toll taps the side of his thermos once. Recovery complete. The tow strap catches the morning light. The Sharpie on the tag is faded, but the words are still there. Written 17 years ago by a man who understood something about recovery that my father never learned. Everything can be pulled out, but not everything should be. Some things, once they land in the ditch, are there because they drove themselves off the road.